Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to today's live stream. If you can hear me and you're watching, hi. I got a new shirt. I'm going to give it a few minutes so people can file in and we can watch together. Puppy. It is quite warm here today. And there's a rainbow in my room. Cool. How are you guys doing on this fine, almost into summer kind of feel? How is the weather in your part of the world? I made sure to get this pretty much right where it left off from when I did the other part of this transmission. I'm not going to do the meditation part of it, but I do want to share the questions that people ask and the answers. So let's give this 5 minutes or more so we can get at least a few people into the here and sit and watch together. So something I've definitely noticed from like watching the live streams and watching myself, I talk with my hands a lot. It's fun. Make sure you like and subscribe to videos. All that good stuff. If you haven't already started watching them and subscribe to my channel, I would really appreciate that because I'm almost up to 2,000 subscribers. I'd like to get up to at least 10,000 in the next few months. And let's see where we go from there. Do. I want at least one person in here with me so we can watch together and then we can sit and discuss it and ask questions and all that good stuff. I'm feeling quite dapper today because I got some new clothes. I got a haircut a few days ago. Worked a little bit today. It's nice and hot out. And I'm going to take my dog to the river a little bit later today once it cools down. And then throw the frisbee for him on the beach because that sounds like a great Sunday. And I'm trying to wait till like 3 so you guys can, so we can all start together or at least get a few people in. But I want to start right now because I do know I've watched the other half of this like a few times. There's some really cool information actually that happens right after the point where I have it paused right now. So okay. I think I'm gonna actually just start it and see who shows up. 1 more minute and then I'll start. Also, I should shut that door. All right, let's begin. How you doing, Knight? Let's begin. At least one person showed up. Absolutely. And hello to all the mothers that do end up watching this. Have a great Mother's Day. Let's begin.
Hello, Bashar. This is Bashar from Germany. I have a question concerning polarity in our 3D physical world.
Hold on one second. I gotta take care of the headphone thing. Let's switch to headphones. Why are you not connecting to my headphones? Hold on one second. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's why I'm trying to get the audio working correctly. Let me just put the Bluetooth headphones on real quick. 1 second. 1 second. All the fun technology I have, and some of it doesn't always work properly. So give me like 2 seconds. Bluetooth. You guys get to deal with me like sitting here doing this. Bluetooth, where are you? Bluetooth devices, all the fun stuff. Connect. There we go. All right, that should work.
Polarity where dark.
Nope. I'm trying to get this to work properly. Connect. All right, there it goes.
And with the light.
Let's go back a few seconds. Even more tint. There we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Hello, Bashar. This is Christian from Germany. I have a question concerning polarity in our 3D.
Oh, and before we really get into this, if you want to support Bashar and you want to watch other ones without me talking over it and give my own commentary to what he does, feel free to go to bashar.org and buy the session and watch it yourself. But let's do it. Let's get started.
Physical world, we have like polarity, we have darkness, and we have the light. And for me, the ascension process is kind of escaping this duality, where eventually we will reach a point where we feel our connection to the all that is, and where we are safe, and where we are connected. And
you're already connected. It's not about escaping physical reality. Physical reality, you're here on purpose to bring that understanding to physical reality, not to escape it. You're never going to escape it.
Can join in a realm where there's a lot of love and peace. Yet I know that you said that on every realm of existence there's polarity. So I am wondering how this fits together. So how is polarity expressed in the higher realms?
Once again, you're not escaping anything. It's integrated into everything.
So it's, if not by or through fear or through darkness, or so if we are increasing our vibration, our frequency, then on a high plane, how is polarity reflected then? So thank you.
First of all, it's not about escaping polarity. It's about utilizing it in a more positive way.
It's the slingshot analogy. You can use everything in a positive way depending on how you define it also.
As we just explained to another individual, the idea of limitation can be an expression of polarity, but it's not always necessarily negative. So we can impose limitations upon ourselves in a positive way in order for us to make discoveries, surprises, experience the unexpected. That, in a sense, is a utilization of
Well, there's no exit in the sense that you can't be non-existence. You can't not exist. You exist. You're going to exist no matter what.
polarity in a positive way. But you don't escape it. You simply make choices that don't allow you to express polarity in a negative way. So yes, it exists on every level, but can be used in very positive ways, as I just described.
Good day, Bashar.
Good day.
So if you watched this, when I did this a few weeks ago, this is actually right where we left off. I just wanted to add that last guy into this. So yeah. Anyways, this is where we actually left off from the last time that we watched this.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Our passion and our pleasure to do so. What would you like to talk about?
I would like to clear up a possible misinterpretation I have of something you said in a recent transmission.
All right, let's do that.
All right. I perceived you as saying that you would be perhaps the only or one of the only Sasani first contact specialists that would be vocally channeled in the future.
No.
There are a bunch of different people who have come through that are from the Sasani civilization. Technically, we all kind of are, because a lot of the Sasani civilization is actually incarnated here on Earth right now.
I'm simply saying that I only come through this channel. There are other Sasani beings that can be connected with for a variety of reasons.
Ryo or Ryok, Shale through Hukulo, and any number of other ones, because there are quite a few that are here helping us right now.
Reasons, whether it's about connecting to a first contact specialist or not. But I'm simply saying I am a first contact specialist, and this is the only channel I will come through.
Okay. So there could
Does that
be
clear
other.
it up?
Pretty much. I thought you said something about in order to focus ourselves in a certain direction for contact, you would be the only first contact specialist being channeled. But
Through this channel.
okay. All right. Yeah, that clears it up now.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would love for them at some point, because it's been a few years since they've had Willa come through. I would love to sit there and have a discussion with Willa later on in that lifetime to see where she is, because I always loved any of the transmissions having to do with Willa. She was always so much fun.
I had an experience recently where I was letting go of a lot of resistance, and
Yes.
I experienced that the reality that I was in, it seemed to be contained within another reality as I let go of more and more resistance. My consciousness expanded, so my
Yes.
previous reality was within a new reality that had a lot more options.
Yes.
She shifted herself to a different reality. It happens all the time. She's just more aware of it at the moment.
But you are a new person in that reality. It wasn't even your reality that you've left. That's another version's reality.
Yep.
So that was within the new person that I became.
You are a new person in a new reality.
Ooh. So I want to point this out. If you guys want to understand this to actually work and how to make it, to have a good understanding of what he's saying here, if you guys watch the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, that's a good descriptor of anytime he's talking about like shifting to another reality, branch realities, all that stuff. That's a fantastic permission slip to give yourself an understanding of how it actually works.
Yes. Billions of times per second.
Okay. And the previous person I was that contained within the new person?
You weren't that person. It's contained within the oversoul.
Also, Willa, she's firmly into fourth density, as we understand it, and their realities operate at a much faster rate. And I heard Daryl say a few years ago with Bashar that when they bring Willa through in that lifetime, it will be from a much later point in her time period. So it's actually going to be a thing of we get to see her after she's mastered all 5 levels of mastery.
Full, but you as a person were not that person. That person is a different person.
Okay.
Person is a malleable, temporary projection of consciousness for a particular reality experience. If you change your vibration, you become a new person in a new reality.
Like we're doing right now.
A different person in a
Okay,
different
okay.
reality. That
Wonder
doesn't
why
mean the
would-
other one doesn't exist, but that's its own reality and its own person. That your consciousness is no longer looking through the eyes of, so to speak.
Remember the film strip, everyone.
Okay. I wonder why it seemed like the old reality was within the new reality.
You can look at it that way if you want, but if that concept confuses you, then it might be better for you to just keep them as separate realities.
Oh, okay.
Ooh. So since we're watching this and we're just getting to the start, I've had someone recently on one of the videos just as a comment, what am I here to do? What I act like is a clarifier as well as a knowledge giver. I like to help people understand the bigger concepts. I also I'm not a guru. I am a teacher of sorts, but I'm not a guru. I'm not anything to be worshipped. I'm just here to share with people and help clarify things and make it much more easy for people to function. So I don't ever, at any point, if anyone ever starts going, he wants to be worshipped, no, dear God, that's an ego trap. And a lot of people get stuck there. All I'm here to do is just share with people and help them move forward. That's it.
Everything is within everything because everything is here and now. But again, if that's a confusing concept, you don't have to look at it that way.
Okay. It wasn't really that confusing, but I like having both options.
Thank you.
All right. If that provides the clarity you seek, then so be it. Remember, it's just about how you define things that work for you.
Okay.
Because everything is here and now.
You can experience anything positive, negative, or negative depending on how you'd like to view it. That's pretty much as simple as it gets. Everything's a neutral prop.
So I was also thinking that if I even let go of even more and more resistance, that I would shift to the reality where there were ETs.
You shift to the reality that matches the vibration that you're putting out at that moment because you're shifting constantly.
And you may be doing that, but there's no insistence on the timing.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't really insisting, but I was just wondering if that's how it mechanically works. Is it just a matter of letting go of resistance?
It's a matter of letting go of resistance or anything that's simply not relevant for the true you. And that means that you've made an agreement. In particular, if you are interacting with us, it's more likely than not that you are part of the agreement of experiencing open contact
Oh, hi, John. How's Denmark this time of year?
with extraterrestrials in whatever time frame that's relevant for those who have agreed to experience that as a collective.
Okay. So it's not just about letting go of resistance. There's other things that you let go of.
After you have let go of all resistance, you can continue to let go of things that are simply no longer relevant, even if they're not resistance or negative.
Like belief systems that no longer work for you. Just letting go of things is helpful, honestly. I've heard him say this a bunch lately and I've heard him say this for years until I finally got it myself. You will shift to even better realities when you quit holding on to the things that, because a lot of people have coping skills that they learned of when they were a child that I know as an adult, you don't always, you go with the things you knew of from when you were a kid. And a lot of people don't take the time to look at those coping mechanisms. Like they will be perceived as weird. Because I had a lot of abuse that I experienced as a child and as an adult. And I had a lot of people go, why is this guy so weird? So what I came to understand through going through therapy and a lot of years of just trying to figure things out is, one, they were coping mechanisms that I had as a child to protect myself. Two, I don't need to hold on to those things. Three, the moment I let those go and quit holding on to those beliefs that I had as a child or those agreements I made as a child, I was able to move on with my life and also able to move on from needing the coping mechanisms and the weird behaviors that came along with it. So
There may be more streamlining, but again, if you just follow the formula, your life will unfold automatically, and you will automatically, if you continue to examine your belief systems, let go of the things that are either the result of resistance or simply no longer relevant for you.
Okay. Will our definition of the idea of limitations change as we evolve?
Yes, to some degree. This is why when we created the book, The Masters of Limitation, we say you go from being...
hold on a sec. I had this book somewhere. Hold on one second.
being the masters of limitation to being the masters of limitation, which means you can more consciously pick and choose how to create borders for yourself to focus yourself in particular reality experiences. Because limitation is not necessarily a negative thing. You're using limitation right now upon your greater consciousness to even have what you call a physical experience. So limitation can be used in many positive ways.
Yes, I'm realizing that. And I even realized that you use limitations a lot, right?
Absolutely. We limit ourselves, especially in these encounters, to make sure that we are not in any way, shape, or form violating the idea of giving you information that it is not appropriate to give you. So we impose certain limitations upon our consciousness so that whatever it is we, shall we say, are not supposed to tell you, we simply will not have access to. We may have access to it when we go back into our normal selves, our own reality, but for the purpose of these conversations, we will actually block information that it is not appropriate to share with you because it would intervene in your own choices and your agreements.
So, a lot of times when you start functioning like they do, if you're not able to say something in the moment if you start functioning like Bashar and the Sasani people do, it's a natural limitation, and it's a naturally positive way of saying, hey, this information is not relevant for this person to understand at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we use limitation to all of our advantages in that way.
You even find it, you have a different theme than we do, but you also find that it's exciting to work with limitations in a way through seeing us and helping
Because they don't view limitations as being negative.
us
Yes.
work with them.
Without certain kinds of limitations, there are no surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And we all want to open up gifts because we all like surprises, whether we say we do or not.
Interesting.
If you could
Yeah.
peer through the wrappings and the box that contain your presents, you would automatically know and not have the thrill of opening it to find out what's inside. So limitations are used in a variety of ways to create discovery and excitement and surprise.
This is also why a lot of times when people are like, I don't remember why I'm here. I don't remember why I do these things. It's a gift for you to open up when you're ready to. It's all about timing.
And we're evolving to find them more in that way instead of seeing them as negative. And
Yes. Limitation is not inherently negative.
Nope.
It depends on how you use it. It depends on what causes it.
yeah, I've been seeing them more as invitations to be creative.
Yes, exactly.
And this is why I said I wanted to wait till this time to play the rest of this transmission with you guys. The limitations that you have in your life are just kind of take some time and actually really look at them. They're not necessarily negative. They're there for a reason. They're there to help you. So don't automatically assume that, like, the moment you start perceiving something as negative or a limitation as negative, take a moment and say, hey, how can I use this in a positive way?
Because then you can, as you say, learn to think outside the box. If there is no box, you can't learn to think outside of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I was wondering if our human body is capable of as much ecstasy as yours is.
Yes, and just in a different way. Like, I can say this after letting go a bunch of stuff. I'm just happy all the time. Not necessarily that I don't like that negative things don't happen, but the way I express my excitement through doing this or ecstasy or whatever you want to say, or how you want to say it, is I'm excited for things to happen.
Yes, in its own interpretation, in its own reality, in its own way. Yes, there is an equivalent. It may not be exactly the same as what we experience, but there is an equivalent.
It seems like it would be more challenging for us to reach that state of ecstasy, though.
If
you say so, and if you have negative beliefs that you're holding on to, because that's the biggest thing. Yes, absolutely, 100%. It's going to be harder, but generally speaking, no, if you really let go of those things, ecstasy is everywhere. It's just a natural extension of who you are.
Say so.
Oh, it's not?
No.
I don't say that. Okay. It's interesting.
Does realizing that you can achieve it allow you to feel more ecstasy?
Yes.
There you go.
And that's why we watch these, because we, like, Bashar or any channel or me or whoever, like, you watch them as an example of what's possible for you to experience. Because if you have a representation of it in your life, there is a possibility that you can actually have that experience or have the ability to perceive reality in that way.
All right. I want to ask you about affirmations.
Permission slips, yes.
But, well, yes, they are permission
Absolutely
slips, but everything
not.
is, right?
Exactly. So what are you going to ask about?
I was wondering if, you said that lucid dreaming can change our template level reality.
It can, if you use it that way, yes.
So I had a dream the other night. It was like about a week ago, actually. I had the dream before, and when I was in the dream, speaking of lucid dreaming, I knew it was a dream. I'm like, oh, I know, I've had this dream before. I know where to go. So I literally I stood up in the dream and I ran to a place I remembered when I had the dream before, where the ship had capsized and everyone died and then turned into zombies. But because I knew it was going to happen and I knew everything how it was going to play out, I stopped it, ran to the spot, and I was waiting. And I'm like, nothing happened. And it didn't happen. Like, the ship didn't capsize, there were no zombies, and I was safe. And I'm like, this is cool. And I remember saying this in the dream, and I still remember it now. Like it's right now. Like it was a moment ago, actually.
And I experienced what I think I was using affirmations to actually change my template level reality.
Affirmations alone will not necessarily do it if there is no lucidity in the process.
But if there is lucidity.
If there is lucidity, you don't need the affirmation.
So I want to say this just because I've seen affirmations, spells, anything like that. It's just setting an intention. You're setting a specific intention that has a vibrational frequency that says, I want to have this experience, or you're sending an experience to someone else. It's more important to deal with your own internal vibration than to worry about someone else's. Like, don't worry about that's when you're saying like a spell of any sort, you're just setting an intention for yourself to experience something or to help with someone else. And this goes back to permission slips as well.
Well, how do you change it then? If you're in a lucid state,
You simply know what the template is, what the blueprint is, and you know what changes you prefer to make in it that don't violate the theme that you chose to explore.
but don't you?
It's an exercise of your free will in a lucid state on a higher level, recognizing what is the theme you chose to explore and being creative about how you can change the way in which it is explored. That's what can change. If you are done with a theme, then yes, you can change the theme as well. And it's just a matter of seeing the blueprint and making the adjustments, which in lucid states, you would automatically know how to do.
So I would love for you guys, because I know this is a much older transmission, and I'm going to make it a point, and I'd love to go back and actually rewatch a bunch of the older ones. I would love to sit there and go back and rewatch the 13th step, because I think that's a really good one to understand, like when you've made that complete and paradigm shift as well as frequency shift. To understand when people don't recognize you, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means you've raised your vibration enough that you've shifted to another reality where they know you, but they don't know you.
The realization of how to do it would come with the lucidity.
How you doing, love?
Okay, so it wouldn't just be through thought, like affirmations are.
No.
Okay.
Affirmations can be a tool to get you into lucidity.
And also you have to have physical actions. I knew I was in the dream, so I was able to shift it.
But lucidity itself brings the knowledge of how to change the template in the ways that are appropriate.
Could one of the ways be through an affirmation?
As I just said, affirmations can bring you possibly into a state of lucidity.
Okay,
But it's the lucid state itself that brings the awareness and knowledge of how to change the template in appropriate.
That noise in the background is actually the chair I'm sitting on. And also, if I need to blow out my my car, the monitor that I have set up for my laptop is quite loud, and I actually need to adjust it, and I need to. There's a lot of dust, and my dog sheds a lot, so that card ends up getting really loud. I actually need to take it out and like use some compressed air to actually get it to stop being so loud. If it's too loud and annoying for you guys, I can actually shut it off. I'm just not gonna be able to look at the questions that you have in the chat.
Way. The affirmations themselves don't do it. The affirmations can, if you believe in them, bring you into a state of lucidity. But lucidity is a different state than the affirmations themselves. And once you are lucid, you don't need the affirmations.
Okay.
All right.
I was in a state, and I started to see all of my a lot of my negative beliefs,
All right.
and
That
they were
can also be a
clear.
way to use a lucid state, to be more aware of yourself. We will eventually cover some of this
Good to know.
in the idea that we will call the 3 questions of self-investigation, an upcoming transmission in what you call the future. And that will do for today.
All right.
So something to note for anyone who's actually watching these and watching Bashar, and so the way he perceives it in his ship is it's only been about 8 months for him. It's been about 40. It's almost been 40 years for him that he started interacting with Daryl, but for him, it's only been about 8 months ish that this whole process has been going on.
Ha'atu.
Ha'atu and Aveo.
Aveo.
I try to keep the microphone away from it.
Hi, Bashar. Recently over Hawaii, we had a lenticular cloud formation. This type of cloud formation is very commonly perceived as a UFO by the contact community. Is there a way to utilize a formation like that to amplify our preparation for contact?
Sometimes they generate a lenticular formation based on ionization of the electromagnetic field around the craft.
Have you guys? Do any of you guys know what a lenticular cloud is? After I saw this when I was watching this originally, I'm like, what is it? What is a lenticular cloud? The lenticular clouds are those huge ones that you'll see them over like volcanoes, and they're like three rings that that show themselves with like light streaming down the center.
So yes, sometimes they can be within it. Sometimes it is simply a weather phenomenon. And sometimes it is an indication of interdimensional connections. It is not always about a craft being in a lenticular cloud. You can utilize it as a symbol as long as you do not necessarily confuse yourself as to the idea of whether or not there actually is a craft in the cloud. But you can use it as a symbol, as a reflection of the idea of making connections. Certainly, again, as a permission slip, it can be valuably used.
Hey, Knight, have you been to a few of the Bashar events?
That way.
Yes, different crafts and different civilizations, because you'll have multiple species in any one given craft, but particular because they're part of an alliance, they use similar technology, kind of like what we do with NATO. They all use very similar technology, but the different shapes can actually tell you something. Like the boomerang shaped craft from for the Phoenix Life, that was a Yael ship. The Sasani ships are pretty much triangle shaped, especially the scout craft. They look like what Bashar's, like if you ever saw the First Contacts documentary that he did. That's what their ships look like. And then you have like the Tic Tac. You hear them talk about like Tic Tac ship, like the large white Tic Tacs. Those are actually hybrids, like the Shalanai, the hybrid children. That's actually their ships, which eventually become our ships, because they'll be part of us.
Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
We have lots of great questions from our viewers.
All right.
All right. The first one is, since there will likely be a major contact event in 2026 or 2027, and we need to raise our vibration in order to connect with the ETs, does this mean that by 2026 we will have raised our vibration high enough to physically connect with ETs? Is our raising our vibration to a certain level the threshold that will catapult us into this major contact event?
So I want to add to this question that she's saying. So, and this is something I've gotten from Ryo. For us to be able to interact with a lot of the ETs that are coming they're going to be coming in and being among us and being on Earth with us, you have to integrate with your higher self. Otherwise, you will burn out when you actually meet them in person.
That you're describing.
While raising your vibration is essential, the event that we are describing in your 2026, 2027 is not the kind of contact event that you may think it is. It will be the beginning of something, the crossing into another era, another level, but it will be for reasons that will not necessarily involve immediate physical contact. Raising your vibration is important to help accelerate into the time.
So, speaking of aliens and First Contact, a lot of times when you have things like that happen, where you see ships like that happen, they're there just to say hi. Like, they're checking to see what your vibration is and what your frequency is and where you are energetically, just to be like, you're in a state where you can see us. Hi, where are you? Depending on how you act to it, will determine the frequency. Because if it seems more normal for you to have those experiences, because we're going through the First Contact process, it lets them know that you're ready for more contact.
When physical contact will be available to you, but the incidents that lead up to this major contact event while they will be helped by raising your vibration, will not necessarily be for the reasons that you think.
You need to integrate. That's the biggest thing. Like, as we approach the event he's talking about, is you need to integrate yourself. The vibration there, a natural side effect of raising your vibration is that you integrate your higher self into your physical mind, into the physical experience, so you become a whole person. That way you can actually interact with them.
We cannot go into too much detail at this time about exactly what causes this event.
They cannot tell the probabilities because it's still in flux at the moment as we shift and move up. Because I've heard from people from other timelines that went down more of a negative route, like the Greys and yada yada yada. Because they went the more negative route, they never actually had contact with ETs like we're going through right now. We're in the process of being able to actually connect with them. So.
Regarding the major contact event foreseen at the time we were just describing, Dear Bashar, we would like the ET civilizations involved in this future event to know that we are willing to help at any point during its preparation.
And that's what we're doing right now, as well as that's what's going to happen for the next few years, because it's going to become actually a talking point in one of our future elections.
If appropriate. We don't wish to be passive, but would be honored to begin joyful interplanetary cooperation in the spirit of beautiful relationships as we journey through the universe together.
Well, all right, but again, follow your passion, follow the formula, raise your vibration. The major contact event will not necessarily be an immediate opportunity for what it is you are talking about, but it will lead to such if you continue along the path of your true self.
Because when you really become your true self, you become completely cohesive with your higher mind, and you're more able to live in the present.
And the reactions and responses.
Well, so yes, ETs are on the planet now in bases and stuff, but it's the contact is very, very limited. What he's talking about when we have full open contact is where they're just out in public and going to events and hanging out with us and doing stuff. It's kind of going through the process of allowing us to climatize to their existence and their frequency. That's why the energy you feel when you're actually interacting with Bashar is actually, it's increased over the years. That's why it feels more intense than it was like 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago. That's actually the process that we're going through right now, so we can actually be able to integrate, because integration is actually the most important thing that you can do at the moment.
To the major contact event will be observed by many and will determine exactly.
Crazy good. There's bad crazy, which is insanity, and then there's good crazy. So if you're good crazy, you're crazy good.
Exactly the schedule, so to speak, the agenda, so to speak, for how
many of the Yael do not eat food. Keep that in mind. Most of them are like breatharians, kind of like the Sasani are.
Open contact may proceed from that point.
I think it'd be kind of fun to go to a concert with an ET, see how they experience it, because I know a lot of them can perceive things at a higher level, so they don't necessarily, so they'll perceive, an ability that Ryo, like, that the Sasani have, they can actually speak shapes into existence. Like, when they speak, they actually create a whole reality or create an object just based off them talking.
Forward.
You've described how direct physical encounters with extraterrestrial beings like yourself and others of higher vibration can cause psychic shock if the person meeting them hasn't raised their vibration
integrated themselves
enough. As some humans raise their vibration by following their passion, can something similar happen between those humans of higher vibration and other humans whose vibration is not as high?
So, Night, usually, not always, but usually the first ETs that we're all going to actually, that you're going to come in contact physically are your counterparts in those civilizations. So you're literally just going to have dinner with yourself.
Or would that manifest directly due to the flavor of vibrations here on Earth?
Yes, it'll be somewhat different, although you may experience the difference more in the direction of people not necessarily associating with each other anymore if they are in fear of examining themselves, in fear of being aware of the different negative or fear-based belief systems within themselves. It is possible that humans of higher vibration may coax those fear-based beliefs closer to the surface, but because you are all on Earth, everyone still has the idea of a choice to avoid or ignore those that they may be afraid to face because it reminds them of things that they may not want to look at within themselves. So while it is possible that the higher vibration may coax people to look at themselves on Earth, it is a little bit different in that they have the choice to move away, walk away, ignore that vibration. So it will not be identical to the effect that would happen if you were, for example, to meet one of us.
That's because you have connections in the society. That's why what he's talking about right now is so relevant, because you're a lot of times I've actually run into people that have been pulled into little pocket dimensions. Like I'm sharing this now because this is it was a friend years ago, and it was actually a friend of my brother's. His name was Joe. He could see UFOs everywhere. Like, he had the ability just to see them, and I kind of wish I had that too. Like, I'm not quite there, but I'm working on it. And his wife could never see them, and after she got with him, she could see them everywhere. So one day they're at the MAX train here in Portland, and they're leaving the Rose Garden or the Memorial Coliseum, Moda Center, all that good stuff. And he told me this story, and I understood what it was once he told me the story, but he goes, we're getting on the MAX, we're just standing there, and this woman walks right up to him. And they just sit there and talk for a few minutes, and his wife was right there with him, and she was standing there talking, she perceived it as well, but the person was actually there to see him. Like, the person was standing there on the platform waiting for him. It was the Palladian, like, someone from the Pallades, the Nordic, because that's what she looked like. She pulled them into a pocket dimension, but it was one of his counterparts from the Pallades that was here to actually talk with him. So it's a real thing, and they're really here, but they have to kind of pull us into like these altered dimensions.
Okay, thank you. Just as you and a number of Earth futurists have expressed the need for us to realize that we are part of nature rather than separate from it, I'm curious about what events would lead to that awakening and a transition to an Earth where that is the case. Does open contact, for example, contribute to that, and how?
Of course, open contact would contribute to your understanding of your expression.
So, Night, when you had those sort of experiences where they just disappear, it's literally you got shifted back into the dimension that you just were in. A lot of times when you have those sort of experiences where it's one-on-one, you get pulled into a slightly shifted out of the actual resonant dimension that you were in, and so you can have that sort of contact, because generally speaking, most people are not ready to have those experiences because I don't necessarily need to. I would love to have those. Those sound like a lot of fun. I don't necessarily need to actually have the pulled out of a dimension, pulled into a separate reality with me, my dog, or whoever. I would love to have those, but it's not necessarily relevant for me to have those because I have more telepathic communication with people, with my counterparts, so I don't necessarily need to have the physical one.
As nature, because It is built into the vibration of many extraterrestrial species to understand themselves that way as well. So that vibration is part of the formula of the frequency into the
Let's go back.
And how
Let's
that
go back.
awakening and express.
to move away, walk away, ignore that vibration. So it will not be identical.
Well, technically, the Nordics are actually our cousins because they're actually. So there's a branch of the Anunnaki that went to the Pleiades. That's actually they transformed into the what we consider the Nordic-looking Pleiadians. Like they're in that system. They're our cousins.
To the effect that would happen if you were, for example, to meet one of us.
Okay, thank you. Just as you and a number of Earth futurists have expressed the need for us to realize that we are part of nature rather than separate from it, I'm curious about what events would lead to that awakening and a transition to an Earth where that is the case. Does open contact, for example, contribute to that, and how?
It will accelerate it.
Of course, open contact would contribute to your understanding of your expression as nature because it is built into the vibration of many extraterrestrial species to understand themselves that way as well. So that vibration is part of the formula of the frequency you would experience from all of us because we understand ourselves as expressions of nature.
And we are all anyone that watches this, we are also all expressions of nature. It's just part of who we are.
Therefore, it comes with the package, so to speak, that you would begin to face things within yourself that would put you in touch with your expression as nature as well.
Okay. And how will universities in particular change after first contact?
Well, obviously, there will be more discussion, more exploration of the idea that you are not alone in the universe. There will be courses that will begin to teach you about the different extraterrestrial species that would be appropriate for you to.
I would love, just because I know he's talking about this right now, I would love to sit there and take a, because I've asked a couple of different people, a couple different channels, and that I've had the pleasure of talking to. I would love to take a class on extraterrestrial species as well as extraterrestrial biology because it's so much different than the way we function. It'd be kind of fun just to see the how like bodies have adapted to other planets.
Experience. There will be deeper understandings of certain ideas in the past that will come into the present again because certain knowledge has been, shall we say, lost over time that will be reclaimed.
Atlantean knowledge, or Lemurian or Anunnaki knowledge that's been hidden.
Regained and re-explored. There will be many different kinds of investigations into your own nature as well as the nature of the extraterrestrials that you will be experiencing in open contact. Plus, you may allow different techniques of teaching to occur in your universities and other levels of schooling that will be.
So this is something to keep in mind. It's not that ETs look like us, we look like them, because most of them actually are. We have, when humans were hybridized in the first place, we actually had 13 different like extraterrestrial races injected into our DNA. That's why there's such a variety of the way people look around the planet. That's why you have Asians, you have African people that are darker skinned, you have Nordic people, and just like all the planet, it's just they express different parts of that DNA that got in like hybridized with.
More reflective of interactive experiences based on the way that extraterrestrials may explain to you, as we have explained to you from time to time, how it is we learn things, how it is we teach things, more by interactive experience than the idea of rote memorization. So your techniques of teaching may also change based on what you are willing to adapt to and adopt into your schools based on what you learn from us.
And so I heard him explain how they used to do school back in Atlantean days. What they would have the students do is they would have them get into kind of a state where they had drummings and people playing music, and then they would allow themselves to get into a state. If they wanted to learn about how to sail and learn how to do anything, they allowed them to become that thing. So it's a much more intuitive way of understanding things, because within the story, because that's why story structure is so important, you can teach so much with a really good story, because it's when it's done right, it resonates, and you can also gain skills from doing that.
Sounds really exciting.
Yes.
What will open contact mean for the great apes on planet Earth? Will the higher...
They're not just here to contact us. They're contact the entire planet, whether it's microorganisms or they're here to contact everything in the sea, everything on Earth, everything, all the plants, trees, animals, what have you. Open contact's not just for humans; it's for the entire planet.
energies of ETs also accelerate their evolution to the same intellectual standard as humans?
No, it will be different. But as we have said, open contact is not just with humans. It is with all life on your planet. But each species has its own direction, its own path.
Civilization. Gandhi. He's so obsessed with nukes.
Its own evolutionary goal, so to speak. It will not be the same as humans exactly, but they will advance, they will evolve, but it may not be something that you can necessarily relate to right away unless you are sensitive to their communication and they become sensitive to yours in a different way.
Telepathic communication. Animals talk. The world talks if you know how to listen. And I mean, you really have to sit down and listen, because the world really does talk. I mean, everything talks. It's kind of annoying at times.
It will mostly involve the idea of telepathy rather than the idea of having the same expression of intellect that humans do.
Everything's intelligent. It's just they're genius. They're like, as humans, we're generalists. Animals are specialists. They're specialized in being that one thing.
So is there a frequency that telepathy is a natural, automatic kind of thing?
Yes, the frequency of unconditional love.
Yes.
And what about like in cycles per second?
Well, the idea, again, is that when you operate above 200,000 cycles per second, then it becomes more natural to experience the idea of telepathic communication.
And
Speaking of telepathic communication, I've had more than a few experiences where I'm sitting there talking to someone and I heard what they were about to say telepathically. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this one thing. And they're like, I didn't say that out loud. And I'm like, oh, oops. I didn't mean to get ahead of you.
that experience of telepathic communication can be experienced as like hearing the person's voice talking to you in your head.
I've had this happen.
But
it can also come in the form of pictures. It can also come in the form of feeling. It can come in sounds. It can come as an animal, like whatever. Like, everything talks.
true telepathy is more of a simple receiving of an entire block of information in the form of suddenly simply knowing what the other person is intending.
And this is why a good story and being in a state of like a meditative state when you're learning things is fantastic, because you get the whole story and everything in one big chunk.
It may come as images, it may come as voices, but it is more likely simply to come as a knowing. You just suddenly know it.
Absolutely. Like, telepathic experiences are freaking phenomenal, and they save so much time and allow you just to go do other things. Like, so I've had this thing happen in the last few days because I've been operating at a pretty high frequency lately. I just have not really been hungry. I actually have to force myself to eat because I'm like, oh, I'm hungry. It's this time. But I don't really feel like I need to eat. Like, the higher vibration, the higher frequency that you operate at, you don't need the things like you did before. It's like the natural rhythm is different. Like, I don't feel like I necessarily need to eat like I used to, which is weird. I love eating though.
No mistaking it. It cannot be mistaken for imagination.
So also, like, when you're in a group of people, because I've been around groups like this where everyone is telepathic, It's pretty quiet because everyone just kind of operates in a fashion where you're able to like communicate very easily without needing to do all the extra like legwork. It's understood and it's communicated instantly like that.
It is simply that the knowledge is suddenly within you as if it has always been there.
So is there such a thing as like a telepathic conversation with another person that's in another room because your
They're very
frequency
short.
is so high?
They're very short.
Yes, although such a conversation wouldn't last very long in terms of time, because again, you have instant knowingness.
Yep.
An instant exchange of knowledge and perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Do ETs ever reveal themselves to people flying in airplanes?
Yes,
All the time.
sometimes. You have many what you call UFO reports of people in airplanes saying that they saw craft outside the airplane window.
Should we high five them?
If you wish.
A lot of times they're just saying hi, like, or playing a practical joke.
They may high five you back if they have 5 fingers.
Okay. You mentioned there will be a new Earth satellite, which represents male energy when male energy is more balanced in the future. Can you tell us more about that?
All we can say at this time is that it will be something akin to a captured asteroid that will fall into a regular orbit around your
And we'll also have ETs help keep it in orbit with their technology.
planet, and in a sense become a much smaller secondary moon.
Yes. The Sentinel Moon.
Do you have any timeline on that?
No.
80 to 100 years, from what I've
Our
heard.
CPUs are currently upwards of 100 billion transistors on them. Are there transitions for Sasani CPUs in your time?
No.
Transitions?
Transistors.
Oh, we do not use transistors. What you may recognize as a computer or a form of AI is purely made of intersecting beams of light. And the equivalent would be 150 trillion operations per second.
I don't know if you guys know anything about computers or how they work. That is a lot, and that's a very high number of like transistors to have in a computer. It's like true quantum computing.
Interesting. If you've never had names,
Also, Knight, I will say this much. When you're going through the process of letting things go or moving up to that higher frequency, don't let your ego get the better of you or presume that you're better. It's just you're going through the process a little sooner. Everyone else will be going through it at some point. So it's not necessarily that remain, even though you are ascending with your frequency and vibration and yada, 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 remain grounded with your energy. Like, that's the one biggest thing. It's connecting to energy and remaining in a grounded state so you don't, because it's very easy to fall into that negative ego trap as well.
then how do you address each other and identify each other?
Vibrational
For instance,
frequency.
if you're referencing another being in a conversation, how do you identify that entity to the person that you're talking to?
Remember that our society is purely telepathic, and everyone has a signature frequency.
Yep.
Therefore, by mirroring or reflecting the signature frequency of another individual that is unique, everyone would know exactly who we are referencing.
Because they're all connected as a positive collective consciousness.
Okay. This person says that they've been getting a strong buzz when they watch your seminars online in real time, and that they've also gotten a similar version of that if they miss the transition and they watch the recording afterwards. Is this a preparation for something?
No, it's just as you raise your personal frequency, you're able to perceive what's already there, and it's also the transmission that he's sending to you as you're watching, sending to all of us as we watch the transmissions.
Well, it's a preparation for raising your frequency because the buzz you're feeling is the matching of the frequency that we give off.
Yep.
Even if it's not a live session, the idea of
And it's the same, if any of you guys are watching this and are watching through what we're doing here, that's actually the buzz that you're getting, not just the buzz of the laptop, which I'm going to pull apart and clean out. That's also the buzz that you're feeling from the communication that we're doing through watching these together.
our frequency is sort of embedded in anything that represents the session, like a permission slip. So even though it may not feel completely identical to a live session, the frequency is still embedded in any projection of the communication that we have delivered. Therefore, you will still, if you're willing to match our frequency, still feel some mirroring or reflection of that frequency within you, which you may interpret as a kind of buzz of electricity or in some other way.
So, Night, I would like to share this with you. It never really goes away. Like, the disempowerment is a lesson you picked, just like I picked the same a similar lesson in a similar way. But it's more about accepting those things and letting go of the idea that it needs to affect it. When you see it as just an option as to how you experience things, it's not so. It's you just see it as an option. It's not necessarily something that needs to be there.
So for many people, because you're coming in at a higher frequency, as soon as we match that, we start experiencing ourselves from that level.
And as you try to experience things to a higher level or to a higher frequency, all the things that you're holding on to or that you're hiding from yourself will come to the surface. That's why as we watch these and go through these together, you're going to feel things come to the surface that you've hidden.
Yes.
In a sense.
Yes. And again, since everything is embedded in existence in space-time, then all you're doing by watching a replay of the communication is, again, you are tapping into that frequency to some degree and allowing yourself to begin to identify and mirror and match that frequency, because all information is here and now.
Like, some people have noticed that if they listen to one of your recordings, every time they hear something different.
Absolutely, because the transmissions are holographic in nature. You're going to perceive a different thing because you're a different person, also different frequency.
And my understanding is that has to do with the information is holographic in that sense. So it will, how does that work? Maybe you can explain.
Well, you have said it yourself. It's holographic, which means you can have many different kinds of layers of information, but being a holographic structure, you will only perceive what you are the vibration of. So listening to it one time or perceiving it the first time, you may be of a certain frequency that only receives a certain amount of the information that is embedded in the transmission. But if you change your frequency, the next time there are different layers within it that have always been there, but may have been inaudible or invisible to you. But
so for everyone who's watching right now with me, love to love and Night, this is also why I would like to go back through with you guys and listen to older transmissions, because there's stuff on different levels that I know I didn't perceive back then, but I know I'd get way more out of the transmission now, because as I've gone through, like, doing YouTube videos and creating these things, I'm actually perceiving and receiving more information than I was able to actually take in like 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So this is actually one of the main reasons why I would love to sit there and watch a lot of the older ones with you guys, because we can all receive the information differently now.
by changing your frequency, now you can pick up on those layers because they are of a different frequency as well.
So that's very exciting, because that means that even if a person evolves to higher and higher frequencies, every time they listen to one of your transmissions, they have the opportunity to hear information that they were not able to access before.
Well, yes, and it might not even be that they hear the information. It might suddenly be that by listening to it, they are suddenly receiving an inspiration they didn't receive before.
And also, he's giving us telepathic communication while we're watching these. That's why you feel like something's blasting out of the screen when you're watching them. You're just be able to receive more of the transmission that he was already in the stream.
Again, it may come telepathically. It may simply present itself automatically and instantly in their mind as a fully fleshed out idea or
Yes.
concept or inspiration that they didn't have the first time.
Ooh. So when I was at so what I do for a living, I'm an orthopedic massage therapist, which is why I don't need to worry about making money doing this specifically. Speaking of telepathic communication, just receiving a fully formed idea, I was working on someone and they had a concussion. I had literally a voice tell me how to solve and help someone to recover from a concussion faster. Like my average at this point is 2 months. In a 5-minute span, I received something that actually took me a good 6 months to master. But now I can usually, if someone has a concussion or has vision-induced migraines, because of the communication that I received, I can actually help pretty much most people to recover from concussions really fast. And that's an example of telepathic communication, because it would all happen in like one block in like an instant.
It may come that way. It's not necessarily something that would be delivered to them auditorily.
So that means even after all of us are long gone, listening to one of these transmissions will provide that opportunity to whoever is listening.
Just like listening to any of these will actually help with whoever's listening.
Absolutely. Because everything exists in the now and never goes away.
Yep.
Phenomenal.
Yes, it is a phenomenon.
I believe that every species has its own limitations and difficulties to overcome.
That's inherent.
What are your challenges? How do you deal with disturbing frequencies? And what does a training day or
They seem as an option.
school for your folks look like?
Well, in dealing with different civilizations, which is what I do all the time since I'm a first contact specialist, it's about understanding and investigating and deeply identifying with the civilization. This is why we often experience the idea of having an incarnation or a life in the civilization, so that there is a deeper understanding. And that's part of our training, is to...
And that's exactly why a lot of Sasani are actually incarnated on the planet currently.
actually live among you as one of you, until we have enough knowledge that we can then deliver this information in a way that makes sense to you. But on our own world, as I was trained to be a first contact specialist, the mentor of what you may call the training, in this case being my father for my class, creates a telepathic reality that actually appears to be completely and utterly real. And we go through different exercises and different contact scenarios in that telepathically projected reality, again, as if it is completely and utterly real, like we are truly interacting with that civilization. But it's a simulation. It's just that a mentor has the training to project a telepathic reality that contains the ability to make us believe that it is actually happening and not just a training exercise.
And if you guys remember from he had a first contact specialist trainee come through in an old transmission. In two of them, the first one, it was a very basic connection, and it was a very what's the word? It was very interesting to watch them actually how they teach, is to have them have that experience so they fully understand how to connect, as well as how to fully talk to the people that they're having first contact with. And then the very next transmission with that same trainee, he could speak fully and clearly, and it was very much a distinctly different personality than Bashar.
That way we get the full experience of it, and any errors come back to us fully in our understanding of what the consequences would be if we actually did make that error in interacting with the actual civilization.
And that's why they had the trainee come through for that class, and they telepathically, all the trainees that were with Bashar at the time, got the same information that one trainee did.
So it's ingrained within us very deeply by experiencing it as if it is real.
So that kind of sounds like what happens to us on Earth, but we don't see it as a projection of consciousness until we become more aware.
In some senses, yes.
Because the experience is the most valuable aspect. Is that correct?
The experience is the only way anyone actually learns anything.
The only thing real in physical reality is your experience of it.
Have you ever killed another physical being, even a plant, in your life? And have you ever brought back to the physical life something after death?
No, I have never killed anything, not even a plant, in my reality. The closest analogy or answer to the second question would be, again, in birthing a new member of our society, we do create a vibrational medium, a vibrational bubble in which the spirit can actually form a physical body.
And what's funny, him saying this to April in his society, in that incarnation in their society, April is his daughter. And she's also a first contact specialist, so she's playing the other side of being physical, but not necessarily having like the vocal channeling like Daryl is.
You want to call that bringing someone out of the spirit world,
Nandia.
Even though it's not, quote unquote, bringing them back from the dead, so to speak. That would be the closest analogy of allowing a body to form that a spirit can use or a soul can use to experience our reality in our quasi-physical nature.
That would be similar to birth in your
Yes.
reality. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why it's so funny there's having this question right now, because April is his daughter in the Sasani, Eshikani or Sasani civilization.
But not in a physical body, in terms of the female or...
April is the name of the woman asking the questions to Dale right now.
any particular being actually giving birth through their body. This is done outside the bodies in a energy bubble.
So is it a joint manifestation between you and a female?
It can be. It doesn't always have to be.
It can just...
It can be between two people. It can be with one person, but it can also be between like 5 or more. It all depends.
just be done on your own.
It can be, or it can be done with any number of members, depending upon what it is the soul wishes to experience as the body that is formed for it to participate in our civilization. It can be done between the same genders. It can be done between multiple genders. It just depends on what the purpose of the soul is and what kind of body needs to be created and what kind of theme they are exploring.
So as he's sitting here talking about this, I'm having my counterpart inside the Sasani civilization weigh in and tell me some things and show me some pictures. It's so pretty. Like, it's kind of like Sasani is it's a really like a dream. Like, the colors are so vivid and so just like, there's like this whole lucid quality to that world. And then even on the, like, he was born on a ship. Like, he's showing me a ship right now. And he's shown me some of his early years inside of that civilization before he went off to go travel and have experiences. Like, he's weighing in and he's showing me, like, some really cool stuff. Like inside, because he was, my counterpart in that civilization, he was born on a ship, and they were, it's like one of their city ships that like Bashar has talked about in the past. And he spent his first couple of years on that ship, and inside the ship they have areas that simulate the environment of Sasani. And like right now he's showing me like what the environment looked like on Sasani when he went to go visit it the first time. Oh, this is cool.
So what does it look like when you see this person manifest in the sense that you're describing?
There is
Nania means daughter in the Sasani language.
a kind of clear energy bubble that can be perceived. There will be a burst of light within it, and a small energy structure will form within it.
That's actually why you always hear Daryl call her Nania, or you hear Bashar call her Nania, because he's saying daughter, as well as Tadeo means father.
And will build very quickly into the cellular structure of a body made out of quasi-physical material. It usually only takes about anywhere from 5 to 30 seconds.
So is this the same as Asasani beings creating a birth, right? Is what you're describing?
That is what I'm describing.
Yes. Okay. That's amazing. Certainly much easier than what the women on our planet go through.
In a sense, yes, it's all relative.
You were having communication from your counterpart in the Pleiades that was answering a question that you asked him.
Are there extraterrestrials who are involved in the hybridization program that are not Greys?
Yes.
And can you tell us anything about that? Do they do this to further their own culture and their own reproductive needs, or what would be the purpose of that?
Not so much, but they are more in an assistive, shall we say,
The mantis beings. He's talking about the mantis beings.
role. Because you have heard tell that when people go on board the ships and they know they are involved in the hybridization agenda, they have also reported beings like the mantises, what you call the tall whites, and several other.
The tall whites are what the Anunnaki transformed into.
Other kinds of beings that are acting in an assistive role for the idea of helping with the evolution of Earth into the sixth hybrid race. So no, other civilizations don't necessarily use the DNA in the same way the Greys have to perpetuate their culture into creating hybrids such as ourselves, but they are playing an assistive role because they are connected and, shall we say, watching over and observing and participating in the evolution of humanity on Earth. Because as we have said, there are many different kinds of stories being played out here. So it's quite exciting.
And that's actually why I'm doing this. Like I said, if you would like to watch this without me talking over it and like saying things and just would like to watch the pure thing itself, please, dear God, go onto bashar.org and you can download this yourself. So.
Who exactly issued the original quarantine of Earth? Was it a collective vote or...
You're part of the hybridization program, just like we all are. We're all here and we're all drawn to this because we're part of that program.
The decision of one individual to gate humans off of interstellar travel for centuries. Are those beings still physically alive to see the results of their decisions?
Before we go into the answer that Bashar has given for this one, and I'm going to actually back up like 10 seconds. Yes, I would love to hear about your interaction with... so also keep in mind, you're still probably dealing with one of your counterparts that you're able to connect with. The physical form is fantastic. It's great to hear about. But you're dealing with one of your counterparts. So if you want to describe it, that's fine. But it could also be just a personal thing for you. And I would love to hear about it because I find this stuff fascinating.
Who exactly issued the original quarantine of Earth? Was it a collective vote or the decision of one individual to gate humans off of interstellar travel for centuries? Are those beings still physically alive to see the results of their decisions?
There is a misunderstanding in the way this question is being asked. The so-called quarantine is for your benefit. The idea is that you're not prevented from interstellar travel. If you were open enough to create techniques technologically to have interstellar travel today, you could. It's just that the quarantine is for the purpose of not intervening or interfering in any negative way that would interfere in your process of discovering who you are. You are not prevented from doing anything. And the idea of the origin of this is between your collective consciousness and the collective consciousness of your spirit guides and the collective consciousness of the Interstellar Alliance in recognizing the sovereignty of the paths that you have chosen as a collective species to explore reality and to evolve in the way that you have deemed necessary for yourselves. We help by letting you know that there may be smoother and easier ways and faster ways to do this, but the decisions really are up to you as to when you are ready for the idea of removing the quarantine.
And that's why we've been going through what we've been going through for the last 40 years, because we're getting into the process of open contact and opening to the wider galaxy.
You are no longer quarantined as far as we are.
And also, so Night kind of got the image that you received is also an example of telepathic communication between you and that mantis being. Keep that in mind.
Concern. It's now in your hands and up to you to determine what you are capable of doing when you bring your belief systems into alignment with your expressions as reflections of all that is.
Okay, and this question comes from someone's 9-year-old daughter, and she wants to know if it ever snows on Essassani.
No, it's temperate all year round. It's quite forested, actually. It's quite pretty.
Not really, because our axis tilt is not as severe as Earth's, and our orbit is nearly circular around our star. Most of our temperature is temperate, it's moderate, somewhere around, generally speaking, give or take a few degrees, what you would call about 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, on the North and South Poles, depending on certain conditions that happen at rare times, there may be a buildup of frost, there may be a little bit of ice, but it does not snow on our planet in the way that you are familiar with experiencing.
And also their planet, because it is they don't have the tilt, it's an expression of, and also a outward manifestation of the fact that they are in a balanced state.
Snowfall.
And do you have a pet, or did you have a pet while you were growing up as a child?
No. Well, he had something. It was like this flat thing. But they don't keep pets like we do.
We do not keep pets per se in the way that you do. There are animals on our planet that come and go freely.
Yep.
And I have many associations and many relationships with different animals on my planet ever since I was a child and even into my adulthood. So
I got my dog, and I love him more than he knows. And he always looks so worried, but I love him anyways.
interact with animals in much the same way that we interact with the people on our planet and the plants on our planet. It just goes off the pure synchronism of what needs to show up when it shows up, and that's exactly the right timing for that interaction and relationship to go on.
Have you ever experienced your version of swimming with the dolphins and the whales?
Oh, yes.
Like physically, have you gone into the Essassani Sea and swam?
Yes.
Can
There
you
are
tell us
actually
anything?
special pools that exist in certain areas, channels that lead into certain kinds of pools where the version of aquatic life that we need to interact with can actually swim more deeply into the land so that different beings can interact with them without necessarily being out in the open ocean. This is something similar to what used to happen in your Atlantis in ancient times, where certain temples were built in such a way that the dolphins and whales could swim into the temples and thus interact with people. So we have this tradition on our planet where there are certain places where channels, canals, and pools are created and exist, some in natural form and some artificial, where certain aquatic beings can come in and interact more deeply into the land.
So I'm just reading what's in the chat right now. Night, that is a really fascinating experience. That is really cool. I haven't ever talked to one of those. I've talked to like Lyran, I've talked to my Sassani, I've talked to Palladian, and yada yada yada, and other counterparts I've had in other realities. I would love to have a discussion with one of the mantis to see what they think, and also, so when you have interactions with those higher level beings, your belief systems, whatever they are, will actually color how you experience them. Like the reason you had that interaction with that mantis being, keep in mind it's one of your counterparts, was to see where you are and how did you want to experience it. It's your choice. That's actually why you had that experience.
Do you have to wear a snorkel when you do this?
No,
So can you breathe underwater?
no, but we can hold our breath for a long time.
How long?
On average, about 20 minutes.
So you're like a cetacean.
In many ways, and again, remember, we are quasi-physical. So the idea of breathing is not completely necessary in the same way that it is for you, at least not as often.
They take more air in, but they also don't necessarily need the physical body to go have the experience with the cetacean or whale or whatever. Which, oh, they have this. I've seen it. They have this creature that lives in the sea on Essassani that's the size of a. Like, you know how we have whales on this planet? They actually have an animal the size of a baseball stadium. And it's huge, and I'm seeing it right now, and I'm seeing his giant eye looking back at me when I'm talking about it right now. So they're really cool.
And what would be the largest cetacean on your planet?
What we have termed the Asiza, that which is sort of a whale-like creature that has stripes a little bit like a zebra.
Yep.
How big is it?
It can range from about 30 feet up to about 100 feet.
And do you have other types
And much, much bigger.
of cetaceans?
We have some of your dolphins on our planet that have been transplanted.
Have some of them come back here again?
A few, on rare occasions, but most remain on Essassani.
Very exciting.
Yes.
If someone were to, in your time, choose to act in a way that was disharmonious or
Yes, and like what he's just talking about right now, that as a way of understanding things. It's you don't have to resonate or interact with things in a negative way to be able to understand what they're talking about.
or even rebellious or break laws or whatever, what happens? Is there law enforcement?
Oh my god, like just feel through me right now as I'm visioning. It's this giant eye. It's just this giant golden eye that I can see. And this creature is just huge. And you just kind of like it, but it's just so gentle, and its song is just entrancing, and you become enveloped in its song, and it's the reality that it lives in as you travel into these really deep places. And I've traveled down, well, no, I haven't traveled, but like my counterparts traveled down into these deep, dark places with it, but it always rises up to the light, and it exists in this void and is able to travel in and out of like these different realities. And it's really cool feeling. Like, just feel it through me right now as we're sitting here talking. Like, I would love for you guys to see what I'm seeing right now. Like, this big gold eye and just swimming alongside it. It's kind of like, if you guys have seen the new Avatar 2 movie that just came out during Christmas, the large creatures that they have in that are very similar, but they're much bigger than what they have in that movie.
How does this work?
Well, nobody does that in our civilization. So it's kind of only a hypothetical. If it were to happen, which again is not something that actually has happened in our civilization, the idea is that what you call the laws are simply the laws of existence. And because there is a certain kind of momentum that exists energetically in our planet, because we have been choosing positive ideas for so long, it is very challenging for us to actually go in the other direction. There's actually kind of an inertia that makes it more challenging for us to choose to do things that are negative or fear-based. or do something against the synchronism that perpetuates our society. It would be like, if you want a simple analogy, like attempting to move in a direction that is filled with molasses. You simply have a struggle going in that direction because of the momentum of the direction that we're all synchronistically moving in. So those things don't really happen on our planet, and the self-regulating energy of the synchronistic way in which we function usually, if anyone were to go in that direction, would usually push them back.
And this comes back to a choice, like, because there's such a momentum in a positive direction. And I mean, just think about it in your own life. When you have momentum that takes you down a particular path, you're going to have that experience. It's kind of like anytime someone tells you a prediction of the future, they're just telling you what momentum you have going at that moment. Because you can change it on a dime, but if you want to go have that experience, go right ahead. It's your choice.
Into the positive direction because of the momentum that is built in our evolution.
So does that mean that anyone who functions at the frequency that your civilization does?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Like the but it's huge. It's like the size of a Volkswagen Bug. It's just freaking huge, and the eye is like this. It's just huge. It's like 6 feet across, and it's just like this giant pupil with like this golden energy resonating from it.
Would automatically always choose positive rather than expressing any negative.
Yes, unless there is a very, very specific reason why something different would need to exist in the society. And more commonly than not, if such a thing were to happen, it would only be kind of like, well, what you would call a stage play. It would be something that would be explored because it would be practice for dealing with civilizations like yours that do make negative choices and fear-based choices. And for that purpose, we might explore it, but we understand it's not actually the choice that is a life.
Absolutely. It's kind of like what he just said. It's a play. The song of those things is pretty as hell. It just like resonates through your entire body.
Choice for an individual, it would only be a temporary expression for a positive purpose of instruction and education.
And since humans may have some trepidations about ETs, the idea that ET civilizations, many of them, functioning at the same level as yours would be similar that way, that there's nothing to fear from ET civilizations that function above a certain frequency.
So this is where a lot of people, because Bashar's civilization, the Sasani, and a lot of these extraterrestrial civilizations that are around, why people go into fear so much is because as you come into contact with those beings that resonate at such a high frequency, the things that you fear are going to come to the surface. Like, I mean, realistically speaking, that's why so much fear when you go into like movies or TV shows where they depict aliens in the show or movie or whatever you're watching the story. The reason they predict it or depict it in such a negative way, it's bringing the writer and the people who are creating own insecurities and fears out and putting it onto the page and out onto the screen.
Correct. Yes, because it simply doesn't go hand in hand with that frequency.
Is there any that we know of that function at like a lower frequency, like the Pleiadians or the Gray? Well, the Greys don't exist now, so.
Yes, but the idea of the Greys, as they are weaning out, becoming the hybrid civilization, is again, remember, they're not true extraterrestrials.
They're humans from a parallel reality that mutated themselves so much they turned into the Greys.
They're mutated humans from a parallel Earth. So in that.
So, Night, I will say this. When you go to sleep tonight, I want you to imagine the Bashar symbol or the Ssani symbol with the black triangle on the blue background, yada yada, that whole thing, and ask your counterpart to go swim with them and know that you're interacting with your counterpart and ask them to do said thing, and you will actually have the experience. It will be the most intense thing you'll ever experience. It's cool.
In that sense, they almost don't count.
I see.
That's why you can interact with them.
So just to get really specific, like what frequency level do most of these ET civilizations that we're hearing about, like
250
the
cycles per
Pleiadians
second.
or others, what
High
frequency level?
enough. We're not going to give you numbers for this.
Okay, but they're high enough that we don't have to be concerned about them doing something negative to us.
No. There is no civilization you are interacting with other than a random visitation here and there by beings that may be of a slightly lower frequency, but there is nothing you're interacting with on your planet that you actually need to be afraid of.
That's wonderful. This one person is writing in that there are more
Do it right before you go to sleep.
and more films coming out focused on the idea of open contact, such as one Pixar film which came out.
Our collective's getting ready with the idea of open contact. So that's why we're seeing so many depictions of open contact.
It's coming out next year. Elio, similar to Ealing. Well, you explain that means the reflection between us.
Yeah.
This film is supposed to be about a boy who gets transported to the other side of the universe to be an Earth ambassador to other societies throughout the universe.
It's a depiction of the future.
Yes.
Can you comment on this collective manifestation?
Well, as we have said, all of your art usually reflects shifts in your consciousness. So because you are now more open to exploring the idea of open contact, obviously your art is going to reflect that in a variety of ways.
And as he's saying right here, think about the idea of 2012. How many disaster flicks did we have coming out around that time, or asteroids, or going up to that point? And as we've moved through things like the last few years, it's been the multiverse. As a collective, we've been working through the idea of the multiverse and how we fit into the grand scheme of things. Like the art that we're actually reflecting back to ourselves right now is the things we're working on as a collective.
Has been doing so for quite some time. You have your Star Trek and things like that have been showing that the collective consciousness of your world is preparing itself to be able to have open contact with extraterrestrial species. So you're bound to see more of this as you get closer to the idea of open contact being a real experience for you on a daily basis.
So, speaking of art and everything and how you connect, when you're connecting to your counterpart and the art that may show up for you, there's going to be different representations in your reality and my reality. It just depends on what you're resonating and the momentum as to how much it shows up into your life. And also they can send you images that you end up painting or connecting with, because more than likely if you have a lot of connection to that mantis version of yourself or that mantis being that your higher mind is allowing you to connect with, be open to the information that it has for you. Come at it from a curious standpoint. Don't necessarily be negative or positive, but be curious as to the information that it gives you. Because as you open up and understand things in a more positive way and be more curious about it, it will more than likely give you a lot of information and also give you images and everything else. So it's letting you know that you are a mantis being, or you are connected to a mantis being at least.
Just wonderful.
Full of wonder.
What? Excuse me?
It is full of wonder, yeah.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
It's wonder. I mean, just
It's sort of like when you're full of awe, you're awful.
the idea that our generation is the one that gets to experience this first
And that's why there's so many people on the planet at this moment.
contact is amazing.
Well, all the generations that exist on your planet. And one of the reasons that upcoming film depicts a young child is because the children are a different species, and to them...
Absolutely. Use whatever tools you've been given to create connection. Speaking of what he's talking about, like the next generation coming up will experience yada yada yada. I resonate a lot with automatic writing, and I've had a lot of conversations with my oversoul recently, and I've gotten a lot of answers to things. So use what you have as a tool in order to get the answers, or to be able to like resonate in a way that you're able to connect. Like the tools that you have, or the things that you resonate with the most, are usually the path of least resistance.
The idea of contact with extraterrestrials will be part of their daily routine eventually, and will not be considered unusual.
Well, Earth has come a long way. Let's just say that.
The Earth you're on now has always been this way.
Right.
Remember that.
So Knight, what have the Yayo been saying to you? Because obviously there's a very strong connection there for you. And I will say this: when you're connecting with them, it's like anytime you're sitting there drawing and just really lost in the moment, you're in a meditative state. So they're there in that way because it's the easiest path of contact. Pay attention to what they're saying to you, because they could be giving you information that could help you move forward with your life, or to questions about your life that you're like, why did I do this thing, or why did I do that thing, or why is this part of my life? Usually they'll give you answers. You just have to listen, because listening, I mean really truly listening, and not judging the information that comes to you, will usually give you the answers you're looking for, even if you don't know it.
Shifting constantly.
Right. Fascinating. So what is the first thing a Sasani child is taught?
Unconditional love. That it is the vibration of existence itself, and to align and match with that. All else falls into place.
And whenever I end up having a kid, or a family, or children, or whatever, this is the first thing I will teach them.
Through pure synchronism.
Okay. And you say that approximately 5% of you comes through Daryl when he's channeling.
Energetically.
Does that mean that we only get 5% of the fullness of your answers to the questions? And this is because we can only resonate with 5% of you?
No, that's a slightly different thing. The amount of information you do get from us does fluctuate in percentage from time to time based on what it is we perceive.
So when ETs are kind of a stand-in a lot of times for your higher mind, it's kind of like if you hear like the Esasani, or like you want communication from your higher mind, and you end up hearing like Daryl's voice or Bashar's voice, they're a stand-in for the that connection. It's an intermediary, so it's something you're comfortable with. So it comes through the path of least resistance.
You can process. But the idea that only about 5 to 10% of my energy comes through Daryl doesn't necessarily have a basis for what the percentages of the amount of information
it fluctuates
when asked specific questions. It will fluctuate on a different way, in a different scale.
Okay. And this person wants to know how we can help our loved ones, everyone awake or not, to get on the right train. Because
allow them
you
to be there with them.
I'll give the information, and don't worry, you'll get the people that reflect where you are vibrationally.
What it is you believe will help them, that's all you can do. Whatever it is they choose to do with that information is none of your business, as we have said many times.
Bashar is funny as hell. Like great jokes, and he's literally just there for all of us who do watch him and resonate with what he teaches. He's there to actually get us familiar with the frequency of our higher mind. He's actually interacting as an intermediary step for us to be able to have that connection.
So that's the best you can do, is just give them the option, give them the opportunity to examine and explore and think about the idea of other paths they could take, other options they could choose, other choices they can make. That's it. And be a living example of making those choices yourself, so they can see in you, living in you, the effect of having made those positive choices. It's the best way to entice them to make those positive choices on their own. But again, you cannot expect or insist that they must, because you don't know what their path is. You don't know what it is they need to explore. So it's none of your business what they choose to do with the information you share.
This is why when you share information, you're planting seeds, and you don't necessarily not getting stuck on the idea, because insistence is usually your negative ego getting stuck in the way. It's there to actually just kind of help guide people, because a lot of times the information you're giving is just to help them, give them that little bit of a push. If you insist that they have to be open to these things, usually they're not going to be.
But sharing that information and living as an example of that information is the best you can do.
And when you noted that in 2012 there was a big split and the path that we could take, I was wondering if we were all on the same path. This is with this person.
Nope. There's many, many different paths to take, and we're all on different ones.
The saying, and if we are here today on this forum, how does that split relate to this split?
As we have said, the splitting prism is still going on. There are many paths, not just 2 or 3. But the idea is that as a general collective group, those that are exploring consciousness, the expansion of consciousness, exploring the idea of the concept of open
just like everyone who watches these videos, we're all here to do it together.
Contact and interacting with us and other beings like us are in general moving along the same general path, going through the same general versions of Earth to some degree collectively, even though every individual still has their own unique reality. But you can have made agreements to go along with certain groups that are willing to shift to similar Earths over and over in the same way that still contains the idea of the expansion of consciousness and the acceptance of your part of being a galactic family.
And that's why I say we're all family here. We're all in this together. We're all here as a soul group.
And do any of the ET ships have weapons on them?
Not any of ours. We do have what you may call shields, energy shells around the ship that can protect us from various phenomenology, but it's not used in that sense as...
So going back to the whole idea of the splitting prism, as people shift out of your life, and I will kind of go into this whole idea in a later video because I want to put this together as a video that I don't do as a live stream. As we shift into, because I heard Bashar say this years ago, think about the last 3 years of that which shall not be named. How many people just disappeared out of your life, never to be seen again? You may love them, miss them, and you see them there, but that's the glass screen, because they chose to go down a different path that no longer fits into your life. So they've just shifted out of the reality that you experience.
Defense, per se, in the way that you mean it, because again, through pure synchronism, we don't attract a need to defend ourselves. That's just simply not in our reality.
And neither do I. And it's fantastic.
So since none of the ETs we are interacting with have negative intention towards us, does that mean that none of them have weapons on their ships?
They have things that could be adapted into a form of weaponry to get your attention in a variety of ways, but I wouldn't, again, really call it weaponry.
They don't. Most of them, like inside the Interstellar Alliance, don't actually have weapons. Like that's actually one of a, like the whole idea of a nuclear bomb. They could really, realistically, with the stuff that they have, they could completely decimate a world, and they don't necessarily need weapons. But they do have things that could be adapted. But for the most part, inside the Interstellar Alliance, no one has weapons. Like, if you read Daryl's books, the Shards of a Shattered Mirror book set that he has, in the time period of Willa, they actually haven't had a murder on Earth for hundreds of years because of what happened after the landing in open contact started.
It can simply be that energy can be adapted in the way they use it and the way we use it for various purposes that could act as a demonstration of the power that we have at our disposal. and the technology we have at our disposal, but we wouldn't actually ever fashion them in.
That is actually a Knight, that is actually a representation of that splitting prism, because it's when you don't resonate the same way, like, you can still see them, you know they're there, but you don't necessarily need to have them in your life, because a lot of times those people who decide, they're also going to project their own ego onto you, how they view the world. So it's kind of one of those things of you have to be able to be okay with the fact that things shift away from where they are. That's
Into pure weaponry.
Okay. Okay, so going in a little different direction now. One person was wondering how many instances where a miscarriage has occurred.
so as the splitting prism continues on, if you try to hold on to all those old relationships of where you were, you don't make space for the new relationships that reflect where you are. So, and don't get me wrong, I have people that I absolutely have loved, and spent so much time with, and all of a sudden they just disappeared out of my life. And I could not understand. And I had a really good friend that up until about like 6 months ago, we were inseparable. We hung out all the time. She came over, I worked on her, like, we do things. And I see her on Facebook and doing things, but she no longer actually contacts me or talks to me, and I'm like, I miss her. But I'm also creating space for a new like, it's okay that she's not here and I miss her, but I'm creating space for someone new to come into my life that does actually match where I am.
Does the soul of the infant actually enter the body, or does it wait to see if the body is viable? For instance, her mother miscarried before her birth and before her sister's birth. Were those other instances too
I'm going to go back on this one, but I actually want to talk about this some more, because this is something that I've had, and this resonates with me, because I had this realization in the last few days, because I've over the years of talking about this stuff, I've driven a lot of people off, because that guy's weird. It's kind of like your family. A lot of my family doesn't necessarily talk with me because I could always sense their fear, and for whatever reason, I would just talk about it until they actually finally said something. Like, I miss them. I miss a lot of people in my life, but they chose to stay where they're at instead of just saying something and working through things. But like, I've had, like, I don't know about you guys, and I know going down the spiritual path, it can be quite lonely, because we're humans. We want to connect with people. In order to create space for new people that will match where you are resonance-wise, you actually have to let go of the old people. Like, I know it's sad to see friends go and no longer have them there. Like, I know how lonely it is. Trust me, I'm very well aware. It's like, if you guys have watched, as a culture, we're kind of working through things. That's also one of the reasons what we've been dealing with, because of that which will not be named. That's also one of the reasons why we've gone through this introspective process of doing the inner work, is so we can raise our frequency, raise our vibration, and move to a higher level. But we can't. But we're going to have to let go of some things, like friends and family and people that used to be part of it. So, and let's get back to the video.
Okay. Okay, so going in a little different direction now. One person was wondering how many instances where a miscarriage has occurred does the soul of the infant actually enter the body, or does it wait to see if the body is viable? For instance, her mother miscarried before.
Also, I will say this much, because I have had this so much, because I follow Bashar very closely and really have integrated his teachings into my life. When you challenge people's beliefs that are not ready for it, they will run away from you. And I've had this happen multiple times because they're like, "You're super intense." I'm like, "Not really. I'm just pointing out the obvious." It's too intense for them because they weren't ready to look at those things.
Her birth and before her sister's birth. Were those other instances two distinct soul identities, or were they simply she and her sister waiting for viable bodies?
In a sense, yes, the second idea. But most souls either do wait until the body is viable, or they may dip in to have a certain experience temporarily and then leave. The idea in general is that most souls don't really fully connect to the idea of a new infant until just before birth. They may dip in and out during that time, but they don't really fully commit, and maybe not even for a few years even after birth.
I can tell you this because this happened to me as a kid. I have a really good memory. I remember actually things from when I was like 1.5, whatever. I remember getting in and out of my body so much when I was a little kid. Like, I'd be in it, and then I'd be out of it. I'd be in it, I'd be out of it. And even to this day, I still get in and out of it. But that's more just, that's how I function. But like, and that's actually perfectly normal too.
Hence the idea of what you call crib death, with no discernible reason. So the idea is that for the most part, most souls do not really commit or connect to a body until just before.
So, my sister actually kind of had this happen with one of her oldest boys, one of her oldest kids. My nephew Josh, after she had her oldest child Andrew, the next year she ended up getting pregnant with my nephew Josh. She ended up having a miscarriage with him. The next year, it was like, that was to say, hey, you have more kids on the way. Do you want to have them? The moment she had Josh 2 years later, she just had kids. It just went boom, 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 boom with my sister's kids. She had a bunch of them, but that was her choice. And the miscarriages and things are there to say, hey, do you want to have this experience? If you do, we're here, we're waiting. It's just kind of a signal.
Before birth, in general.
Okay, and when you were mentioning that about crib death, they've found that when babies are sleeping with another human being, it helps to regulate their breath, and that can be a preventative for crib death. Is that related to what you're saying there too? I mean, how
Yes,
that would
to some
fit
degree, because again, there are agreements that are made that will allow the child to function in the way it needs to function in physical reality, and that may attract an adult to work with the child either through breath or other methodology.
I want to, so Love, if you're still watching, Love to Love, what's been some of your experiences? Because I know I've been talking tonight for a while, like, because I love talking with you guys as we're doing this. Like, this is fun. And whoever else is watching, John, because I know I've seen, I don't see the list of who's watching at the moment, but I would also love to hear about some of your guys' experience, because as we've gone through the splitting prism together as a world, as people, I would love to hear from all of you guys on how the splitting prism has affected you guys and what your experiences have been, because it'd be fun to actually kind of put them into a video to kind of illustrate to other people what are some of the symptoms of going to those splitting realities.
To allow the child to really cross the bridge from non-physical into physical reality in a way that it can thrive. So it just depends upon the themes of exploration and the agreements that have been made.
Okay.
Hi, Jeffs.
When a person crosses over into spirit, can you clarify if it's the personality that continues to exist for eternity, or
I can see that, and I absolutely appreciate that.
is there some specific, like from one specific life, or does that being
Yes, there
discontinued?
will always be a part of that continues to exist that
And I love really passionate people. It makes my life more interesting.
is representative of the experience of a specific life. Again, similar in analogy to the idea that there will always be knowledge and experience within you from your childhood, even though you're not a child anymore. It never goes away. It's always there and always can be tapped into. So the idea of having a life experience is something that is then simply part of the
It can be short, it can be long, it can be 100 years, it can be 1,000 years. Your choice.
soul itself. You can simply say the spirit is the specific representation or symbol or reflection of the life experience, and that becomes part of the soul and is always accessible. So yes, it always remains, even though the soul may be bigger and greater, and the oversoul even bigger and greater than that. You never lose anything, and that particular aspect of the being can always be accessed.
And when you die, this is why nothing is ever lost. Because on a greater aspect or a greater level, anytime you learn something, it's still there. It's waiting for you to access it in the right way, in the right timing.
And tapped into from many different sources, including the physical person who may need to interact with that aspect of the greater soul to recognize the being and recognize the person they knew in life. So
this is why I was able to look at my my life plan for this incarnation and gain a better understanding of why I'm here to do stuff like this.
it's always there. It just becomes part of something bigger, in the same way that your childhood became part of something more experienced as an adult.
And how does that relate to the idea of the independent frames that actually have no motion, and it's the projection of consciousness through them that creates the ongoing time experience with it? How does that
yes,
relate?
But now you're talking simply about a mechanism by which you have a certain kind of physical experience. What is it you're attempting to relate to what we talked about previously?
In spirit, when the personality still exists, but it's no longer is it living as a spirit, or is it?
It expands to the level of the oversoul, and it understands that it's in spirit.
Everything exists at once, remember? In that sense, the spirit, the personality, the physical being all exist at the same time and can be accessed by the soul from any number of directions. So the idea is that there are frames on every level except the one.
Yep.
Every level, because as soon as there is any experience of division at all, as soon as there's any experience of an other than yourself.
If you need someone to explain something, it's not oneness anymore. It becomes two-ness and duality.
Then there are frames, by definition. It's just that the experience of time and space in those frames is different from level to level.
Yes, it is.
I don't know who thought this up, but it's pretty amazing.
It just is the nature and structure of existence itself in the way that it must function.
It's really
by definition.
Many people have negative experiences when studying, especially in Asia, this individual is saying.
It's because everyone's been forced to do something that's not actually natural to do. If you're excited about something, it doesn't matter if you study it. Like, if you study it and you're excited about it, you won't have a negative experience about said thing.
Studying sometimes becomes torture, and children are taught to accept that as their fate. Why do people
adapt the excitement or the theme you're playing out to what the child's excited about? I learned much more about math and geometry and all those things when I was doing construction for a living, because it was relevant for me to have that experience and have that understanding, than I ever did in school.
have a belief that we have to study hard and memorize and to grasp knowledge and technology? How do we free people from this unnatural way of studying? And perhaps you could also share some other ways that we can study so that it's not like that.
All right, well, we have actually explained this many times, but the reason that it seems ensconced in your society to memorize things comes from long ago, when you were hunter-gatherers and you needed to memorize certain kinds of hunting paths, certain kinds of places where there might be danger, where there might be food, where you could be taught to understand how to do things in a certain way and memorize those things for your own safety and for your ability to thrive. and it's simply been handed down through the
We need to update our educational system, I think is what he's getting at.
generations for thousands of years, that memorizing things like that would actually be to your benefit. And
It's not. It's really not. Studying things can be done in a number of ways. Like, I've learned so much just because I'm interested in things.
to some degree it can be. But as we have explained several times, the idea of actually creating scenarios in which you can experience things directly, what you may euphemistically refer to as learning on the job, is actually the better way to learn something and instill it within yourself, because as long as what it is you are needing to learn to thrive in physical reality is adapted to what you are really passionate about, you will retain it. And in fact, you will become excited about learning.
And that's why I know like 5 languages. I can do anything I just put my mind to because I'm just excited about it usually. And I dive into it and learn way too much about it until I can do it without thinking about it.
And you'll absorb information very readily and retain it very readily because it's based on the idea of being taught to you through the auspices of your passion and what it.
So I have had patients that are school teachers, and they actually describe, like, because I've been out of school for a very long time. I really have. They describe some schools that if I would have been in school and this was the curriculum and the way they taught things, which they're teachers, and they said this is actually how they teach things now, more experientially versus like sitting in a classroom.
Excites you rather than simply suppressing your excitement to learn something in a way that isn't necessarily representative of your passion. So creating simulations, experiences that are interactive and immersive, and teaching you the things that are important in your society that way is what will allow you to have fun doing it and retain it, because you're doing it in the way that you're already excited to learn, by opening up your passion in ways that make it relatable to learn the things that you really need to learn, and to know the difference between the things you actually do need to learn and the things you don't need to learn.
So just accepting the idea that we'll need to know what we need to know when we need to know it.
Yep.
As is.
And I've had people ask why I just know things, because I literally live by this. I know what I need to know when I need to know it. They think I'm goofy, but I'm like, no, I really just literally know things just when I need to. And a lot of times I don't even remember most of it until like the moment it happens or the moment I need it.
True for your existence. That can be very natural for us eventually.
Yes, eventually, when you actually learn to rely on pure synchronism.
And I've had days where I literally do just rely on pure synchronism, and holy crap, those are fun, exciting days where just all sorts of random cool stuff happens.
But until then, you can practice the idea of creating imaginary and creative, immersive experiences that allow you to have experiences in a safe way that will teach you what you really need to know to thrive in physical reality without compressing your passion into a box.
I'm not a box. I'm a hypercube.
And what is the difference between insisting on something and knowing something?
When you know something, you will know the difference between the two. Because insistence still carries with it the idea that you don't actually believe in it yourself. You don't actually know it yourself. You're actually trying to convince yourself of something that may or may not be relative to you.
You're lying to yourself. And you're believing the negative beliefs when you have that insistence, because you're like, I don't know this. It's where imposter syndrome really comes from.
So the idea of knowing is just something that is absolutely known by you, as if it is something that you breathe, something that is part of you, something that you know is true and in alignment with who and what you are and what your relationship to existence is. Insistence implies that you don't really buy into the power of the thing you're insisting about. You're not really convinced yourself.
What about when a person feels angry at something that is said to them? How can you manage that
Self-judgment.
anger? And
By understanding that what is said to them has nothing to do with them, if that in case is the fact. So the idea, again, as we have given an analogy, is as if a total stranger has come up to you and said something You don't react because you know that they know nothing about you, and therefore what they're saying to you has more to do with their issues and their processes than it has to do with you. They're just using you as a sounding board, projecting their issues onto you. And you know this, so
It's self-judgment. A lot of times, 90% of the time, it's just self-judgment about who and what they are.
there's no reason to react. Now, you can always look at the advice or the sayings that someone gives you and say, well, is there something here for me? Is there something I need
A lot of times, no, and especially these days, especially not no. It's usually a no.
to know about myself that would help me to benefit from? And
Yo!
But if you understand that what they're saying has nothing to do with you, then why would you react? So you have to look at your
You got to look at your definitions and your beliefs. If it's something that you feel shame around or self-disempowerment around, you're going to react in a negative way.
own beliefs about why you believe what they're saying is true.
And a lot of times you've been told it your entire life, and it's not emphatically true about you or anyone else. A lot of times they're just reflecting onto you how they feel about themselves.
And what's the
This is I'm going to give you guys something right now. So this is my favorite tactic when people start throwing negative stuff at me. And usually when people start throwing that negative juju or they start coming up to me, I usually go, okay, so is this really true or not? And I actually ask them, I'm like, why are you judging yourself? And a lot of times they slink away because it's this whatever story they've been telling themselves so they don't feel bad about what they're doing.
connection between anger and grief?
Well, again, both to some degree are judgments of a sort that assume certain things that may not.
Come on, keep playing.
So is that sort of our maturation process to understand the nature of the reality that we're in and be more accepting of the coming and going and not suffer so much when we lose an individual, so to speak, or
Yes.
just recognize it in a different way?
Yes, but even more so, it's recognizing the nature of the reality that's in you, because you're not in physical reality. It's in you. It's a project.
We're all actually in spirit right now. I tell most people, I'm not really telling you anything you don't already know on some level. It just resonates with you. That's why you're actually listening to, because you resonate with what I have to say. And I'm just reminding you of the things you already know anyways.
Of your consciousness. And when we say projection, we don't even really mean that it is projected outside of you. It's all happening within you. There is no outside. There is no outside.
Nope.
It's all happening in your consciousness. All of it.
It's all happening in the mind of the dreamer.
So it's the reality that's in you.
Puppy, is it dinner time?
And this person is saying that sometimes they have negative thoughts and everything, and they get really scared that it's going to manifest, and they just get more and more fearful.
This is why we have a time-space lag. When you ask for something, it's saying, do you really want to have these experiences? Like, I just got done living with a person here at this house that I live at, that she was letting her fears manifest to how she interacted with me or other people in the house on all these weird rules that just didn't need to be there because she was afraid that something was going to happen that was never going to happen.
Fearful because they're having negative thoughts and they're afraid they're going to attract it or manifest it. So how can we work with that?
All right, well, you understand it's the fear itself that might attract it, not having the negative idea or perspective.
And when you actually look at more things as this is their thing and this is their fear, you don't necessarily have to. You can honestly, when you look at things from a higher perspective, you can say, no, thank you. I don't need to have this experience.
Are they in any way, shape, or form concerned that if they have a positive thought, it might manifest when I don't want it to?
It doesn't have to. I always give people the option not to.
It's the same thing. Just having the perspective, just having the observation, just having the awareness that there are thoughts that might be negative isn't enough to manifest them. You have to be afraid that they'll manifest. You have to believe
And a lot of times when people are afraid something might happen, they put a charge on that experience or on that belief. And when you have a big enough charge around it, it will manifest. Just like if you have... That's why, like, if a group is trying to positively manifest something into reality, it works better as a group because you're putting your energy into it.
In your belief system.
This is why they had covens back in the past. Or as, like, if you go to witches, that's why they had covens, because it helped manifest things much more easily than just one person can do by themselves.
That they will manifest, that it's the most likely thing that will happen. Why believe that? Just having the observational thought isn't enough energy to make it manifest, unless you're really, truly invested.
And you have to have, like, energetically, just because you have a thought about something doesn't mean it's going to actually appear. You kind of have to have a momentum around it in order to actually make it appear in physical reality. Like, you have to give it action. Be more of an observer of your thoughts than just someone who just takes it in just because.
In it doing so, and having deep fear that it might manifest is having a deep investment that you are going to attract it as the most likely scenario. So just look at the idea of positive thoughts. You don't have the same reaction to those. It's equal to the idea of negative thoughts. They're just observations, they're just considerations, they're just thoughts. Remember that as you expand your consciousness, you become more aware of the negative and the positive, not less aware.
Yes, completely, 100%. It's the knowing that this thing is going to happen, that your world is going to fall apart. Like the very first speeding ticket I ever got, I was so afraid when the guy pulled me over that I just asked for the speeding ticket, and he was just going to give me a warning, let me off with a warning. But he goes, here's the speeding ticket you asked for, and I'm like, I created such a belief around it, I ended up getting a speeding ticket for the first time.
You experience things less when you don't choose them, but it doesn't mean you're not aware that they're there as choices. You actually become more aware of them as choices, but just being aware that they're choices doesn't make them manifest. You have to invest in them deeply.
So
These are not the droids you're looking for.
along those lines, if someone has phobia,
Yes.
can you address that idea of changing something like that? Like a negative thought is one thing, but having a very deep fear of
Yes.
Those can carry over from other incarnations, other connections that you have. Like phobias like that can actually originate in those realities.
All right. Well, again, it can be approached in many different directions. For one thing, you can understand or ask yourself, what does this particular phobia symbolize for you? If it were to happen, what does it symbolize?
Usually, if you have a phobia about something, they're symbolic in nature, like he says, and it's usually the belief system, the negative belief system, to actually be like, oh, when you really look at it, it's a lot more simple than you're breaking it down to be.
Does it prevent you from doing something? Does it prevent you from looking within yourself to recognize something that the phobia symbolizes within you as a fear-based belief? What is the actual fear about? It's not usually about the thing itself that symbolizes the phobia. There's usually a deeper meaning, and if you're willing to investigate yourself, you'll usually figure it out and realize that you don't have to be afraid of the symbol that reflects a fear-based belief.
Come on.
The symbol is just there to show you that you have this fear-based belief.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, many times people say that they have a fear of heights. Many of them, although some of them might, don't actually have a fear of heights. They have a fear of falling, which means they have a fear of losing control.
So that's why also I find a lot of people have a hard time with what Bashar says, is they have a fear that they're going to lose control of their life by going into that state of surrender. Giving up control and surrendering is not, or surrender is not giving up control, it's recognizing the control you already have in the situation. And that's why it's important to practice forgiveness, as well as it's important to practice being present and aware enough to understand everything is neutral and you can experience it in whatever way you need to.
Losing their balance. That's the issue. So if they understand it deeply enough, they can understand how to transform that, because then they can realize that if they simply continue to choose belief systems that allow them to remain in balance, if they believe they're worthy of that and deserving of that, then there is nothing to fear, really. They will always be stable, they will always be in balance, and the phobia itself, in that sense, can fade over time or quickly.
Also, counterpoint to this, yeah, fear of heights. So if you're also experiencing like pain in your hands, yeah, that's carpal tunnel and like all those things. It's also a need to control things. So when when you have pain, and this is something I've learned recently, if you're having pain in your hands and you're experiencing like not being able to use them, that's a feeling of needing to control everything in your environment. Usually when you're able to let go of the fear and the self-judgment around needing to control things, the pain a lot of times will go away and the symptoms will go away.
But they have to understand the real deep-rooted reality of what it is they actually believe will happen in their core beliefs about why that phobia is bringing it to their attention.
What about like claustrophobia? A lot of people have that.
Well, again, it's about the idea of feeling trapped and limited
I have had claustrophobia. It sucks.
by your belief systems. Trapped and limited in life, closed in, that you don't have the ability to expand, you don't have the ability to connect, you don't have the ability to reach out, you don't have the ability to see the light that is all around you. You are trapped by the idea that you are in darkness, in an enclosure that doesn't allow you to express your true self.
So when you come across these kinds of fears, what's the antidote thought process that describes how to deal with that? Or as you were explaining,
I just gave it to you. You have to understand what the phobia represents, and you have to get into the core fear belief about why you're holding on to that. How does it serve you to hold on to that? Look at the motivational mechanism. Remember, you don't choose to experience anything that you don't believe
You do not experience anything you are not the vibration of.
serves you. So if you have a fear-based belief that letting that phobia go will actually be the worst thing you can possibly do, that something even worse than the phobia will happen if you let it go, then you're going to hold on to that phobia because you believe that no matter how uncomfortable it may be, it keeps you safe from something even worse. But you have to have honest self-investigation to figure out what your belief system is telling you about that.
So in a sense, I'm thinking right now about like Natalie Wood, who in childhood almost drowned on a movie set, and then for the rest of her life had a fear of dark water. And then her life was ultimately ended in dark water.
Because she had glimpses of the future, and also she probably had a couple lifetimes where she's drowned before that.
Is that what you're describing?
As a simplistic surface example, yes. But there may have been deeper reasons for that experience in her theme of exploration. You can't necessarily completely generalize it in that simplistic form for everyone. One person having that may have it on a very simple level. Another person may have a much deeper reason for having those experiences.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, the last question then is it synchronicity that the James Webb Space Telescope looks so much like the Essassani crystal
Yes.
that you've described?
We will just leave you with a smile.
The people at NASA and the government do actually watch these. They just don't say it out loud.
Okay.
And bid you to now allow yourself to relax, to go in.
Okay, I am not going to play the meditation part of this. So, here's my plan from as we go forward. What I want to do for the next few transmissions, or the next few of these live streams, I'd like to take older ones of Bashar that he put out years ago, and since we're all coming from a higher perspective and a higher frequency, I would love to go and sit and watch these older ones with you so we can actually view them from a different perspective. So as being of different frequencies and allowing like the fears to go away and being able to perceive more of what was already there. I would love the next couple that I think I'm gonna do, and I'll have to dig them up, is I want to go over the 13th step, which I think is a fantastic one. Also, let's go over sacred circuitry, because I think that would be a great one to understand and perceive, because I know many of us are actually operating from a much higher frequency, so we'd be able to actually perceive more of the message together as a collective. I am glad I could help you out, and I'm glad in the future I would love for anyone to actually, and I'm getting something right now, I would love for any one of the transmissions that you guys are actually interested in, please feel free to drop one that you might be interested in watching, and we can watch it together. I'll get it and we'll just kind of sit there and discuss it, because I know that I understand this stuff much better from where I am, and I know you guys understand it, but it would also, as a collective, we could actually understand it better together if we actually look at these things. But I would love to do sacred circuitry. I think that's one of the next ones I actually want to do. I have to dig it up because I have it somewhere. I don't know where, but I know I have it. So, my happy people that I have been watching these things with, I know that there's always new ones coming, but I'd like to go back and watch the really old ones, because there's stuff there that you didn't know at the time. Where you are now, you'll perceive the things that we didn't, and that's actually the real the heart of why I want to do these live streams, because frankly there was a lot of things I didn't get back in the day when I watched those. Going back now, I perceive things on a completely different level than I did years ago. So that's the idea from here on out, is I want to actually just kind of go through and connect, as well as watch more of these from a higher perspective, and because we actually have the answers where we didn't have them years ago. So feel free to drop on any of the any of the announcements that I put out there as to transmissions you'd like me to take a look at from years ago, and we can watch them together and discuss and have a whole, like, this is what he was talking about, and there's more to come out of that since we're coming together. So you guys have a great day. It's fantastic seeing you, and I will see you next time. Knight, it was fantastic having you be very active in the stream. Acceptable person. I don't know your real name, but it's good having you back, and I look forward to watching more of these with you guys soon. Have a great day.